Tonight on Game Night, Aaron, Mark, Lincoln, Nikki, and myself, Dave, are not going to play games. We're going to talk about games, specifically the 6 games nominated for the 2015 Spiel des Jahres and the Kennerspiel des Jahres. So let's get to it. These are the 6 games nominated for the Spiel des Jahres this year. These 3 right here, Machi Koro, designed by
Masao Sugunuma.
Thank you, Aaron. Colt Express
By Christoph Rainbow.
and The Game
By Stefan Bendorf.
This is the main award, the Game of the Year award, and these are the Kennerspiels, the sort of slightly meatier games. Elysium by Brett J. Gilbert and Matthew Dunstan. Orléans by Lincoln.
Reiner Stockhausen,
And Broom Service.
Andreas Pelikan, and Alexander Pfister.
Okie doke. Let's start with the Game of the Year award. This is the one that we all followed for a long time if you were following this award before they added this one. Let's start across the table with Mark.
The Game?
Sure, The Game.
We're going to talk about the game?
Pick one and start.
Okay, so I got to play that one with you guys.
What's that one?
The Game.
Which game?
The Game.
This game?
That game.
Which
Worst
game?
deal.
Worst Who's on First routine ever.
Exactly.
And so I really liked it. Now, that doesn't mean I think it's an award-winning game, but this has been the one that's been the weirdest because it seems like, well, it's you can see it's so tiny. It's a card game. It's a card game competing with the big boys, and sometimes card games don't make it, Hanabi notwithstanding, maybe Dominion notwithstanding, but Dominion feels like it's a big game anyway. But this is a little card game, and normally I love little card games, and I like this one too, and I've had more... I decided early on when I played, it's like, this
This is Orléans.
I decided early on with the game that I didn't love it, but I've played it the most probably of all the games here, and every time we play it, people have fun.
Right.
And like we did when we played it here. And I still don't think that means it's necessarily award-winning, but I need to get a copy. I even, like a lot of people, ginned up a copy because you can do it with any sort of set of numbered cards. But I want to get, I want to buy the real one. I want to have it.
The guys that did this, IDW Panasaurus, are going to do it.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I want to get that. I want to have it in my collection, but it's not my pick.
It's it's interesting. I feel partly it's there because of Hanabi, because of the cooperative thing from last year. But it is also to me no surprise that the designer is the same guy that did Quicks, because it's very similar, I think, in Quicks, because I remember when Quicks was nominated 2 years ago, and people were like, what?
Yeah.
Why is this nominated?
We hadn't heard of it.
Right, and yet, that's the game that comes out still a lot. That game ended up being more fun than I think, well, not everybody, but more fun than a lot of people, I think, thought. And oftentimes that's the one that people, again, it's short and it's fast, and I felt like we might not even have heard of it if it hadn't been nominated, right?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And you're talking about Quicks now or the game?
No, well, in a weird way, both, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of gamers, when these 3 were nominated, were like, heard about this, maybe played it, heard about this, maybe played it. What?
Yeah.
Right?
We went and sought it out, right?
Yeah. What do you think, Nikki P?
The game, I had fun with it. I liked it. I liked the cooperative. But again, I'm with you guys. It's a little box. It's odd that it's a choice. But then there was Hanabi, and then there was Quicks, and so it's
So maybe
fun.
that's a direction.
It's fun every time I played it. I haven't played it that much. I don't know how often it would get to the table.
Yeah. Are you going to be playing it in a year?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a lot of games, though, that you don't necessarily play in a year.
Yeah.
Regardless of how good they are. Right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's not the litmus test anymore.
Don't you want
But I
Spiel des
think-
Jahres to be something that is
If you're
like...
going to award a game best game of the year,
Yeah.
you want to be playing it a year.
Well,
and
remember,
many
it's
years
the
from
best German game of the year. It's
But it is
German.
the year, it doesn't say the century, right? It's just the best game of the year.
Right,
You
so
can forget about it
okay.
immediately after
2016, you would stop playing it.
No way.
Lincoln, do you like the game?
No, I
or do you
love the
love the game?
I love the game. I think it's a good game. My thing about it is it's got a game element that is fun, but the problem with it for me, and I think ultimately for a lot of folks with Hanabi, is that they're bothered. I mean, there's discussions about it on our video post for this, that it's not that we were cheating or whatever. There was already, even though we knew that there was a potential of that, but how would you play that game, any game, without having some sort of way of shorthanding and stuff,
Right.
you know? And that, I don't know if that matters to the judges. I mean, they were very proud of this choice. They're like, aren't you surprised we chose this? I'm like, no, they said, would you have expected this from us had we not nominated Hanabi? I'm like, of course not. But, you know, because I feel Quicks is actually a more standard game. You know,
Right.
it's a traditional, it's got type
Yeah.
of game with some Knizia-esque elements to it and stuff like that. So it's
Right.
not that far from left field. This one is definitely odd. It's art-wise, it's weird.
Yeah, for sure.
That part I agree.
But I still think it's a worthy nominee. Once I played it, I was pretty impressed that they had picked it.
I think Mark has played the game Solitaire.
Yes.
And would probably say that was a pretty good experience, a good, fairly decent solitaire experience. But the only different element or added dimension when you play multiplayer is just that, the communication between the players.
Which is the most
And-
fun part.
Okay, but it's sort of the whole game too. The figuring whether you decide to have conventions of communication and whether that's cheating or not,
Yeah.
you have to communicate something to the other players about what order to play in and what piles to play on. And but I sort of almost feel like that's the entire game. Otherwise, it's just a solitaire game that we've divided up into 4 different hands.
Meaning the social
the
dis-
social,
experience,
the
or even
communication,
the discovery of how you
discovery and
how you talk to each
experiment.
other.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not entirely true. Go ahead, what were we going to say?
Don't you find that all the games that force you to do, you can't say directly, groups of people create their own shorthand
Absolutely.
for those sorts of
Times Out
games.
does.
And you walk into a crowd and their shorthand is different than the
Right.
group you
Right.
usually play
Right.
such
If
and
you
such
right,
with.
you go play werewolf with a group
So-
of people you've never played with before, and
Yes.
they all know whatever you
There's a
comment and
shorthand.
everything.
I think
means.
it's
Sure.
unavoidable with a game, any game where you can't straight out say
Right.
yes, no, put 16 here or whatever, that you're going to create a shorthand.
Right.
I agree.
And by the way, the first time maybe you play it, that might be true, but the second or third time, I mean, the second or third time I was playing it, I was specifically trying to, and maybe I was overthinking it, but I was specifically trying to think, oh, maybe I shouldn't play this card yet. Like a 33 had not showed up yet, and I had the 43, and I'm like, well, maybe I should save this and not play, even though I could play it right now. Maybe I should save this for the jump. I mean, there was some minor strategy in that regard. It wasn't just about the communication with other players. There was a little hand management sort of going on.
Yeah.
If you cared to think about it. Again, I could be trying to, overlay more game than there is there for my own
In the game.
enjoyment. Yeah, but I mean that was there. I felt like that was there.
I agree. I'm just saying that I think the major element of the multiplayer is that communication and trying to communicate ideas without being specific. Which
right.
is very interesting, but it also, again, makes it the odd duck out and the very not, traditional Euro gameplay, which makes it an interesting choice from the jury.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm glad that they're making those kind of choices. It definitely changes it up.
Yeah.
That it's whatever you think the standard nominees are has shifted, right? We knew like a lot of people felt Colt Express was going to get nominated. That's from the German side of things, and it was people that I talked to.
Do you think they're reserving a slot for
No.
the odd game, the surprise
I guess maybe
pick?
because like Concept was that game last year, maybe.
That we're going to surprise you game?
Well,
Yeah.
That would
Well,
be
you could
great.
argue
Or
Hanabi was
Hanabi
that
or-
too,
or
right?
Of
Quicks,
course, but that
yeah.
was the beginning of that stuff, I think, ultimately. Although, an argument can be made, Dixit's an odd game, ultimately in the grand scheme of things. But it's a really good game, So I think they're just looking for the different, I'm not sure that that's different enough in my, assessment of the game, but I do like it. I think it's a fun game. I do love it. I think it's a fun game.
I feel, however, that I'm not sure this would have been nominated if Quicks hadn't been nominated 2 years ago, right? It's the same guy, and that sort of maybe lends him more status. I don't know. If this were a brand new first-time designer, do you think they would have picked this?
Potentially. I mean, the thing is I really feel they're looking for different stuff. They're actually trying to find different things.
Do you think that's why Cacao, for example, did not make the short list?
I mean, I don't know. I know that there was discussion in the jury. We talked to people that had wanted it to be on the selected 3.
But that must happen every year,
Absolutely.
right?
There's 6
right.
opinions,
Yeah.
I think, at least,
Sure.
right? You know.
All right, well, you mentioned Colt Express, so take us there.
Okay, well, it's a beautiful game, and I like its ideas. I'm not a huge fan of program movement, which I'm going to contradict very quickly with this game. Where it's tough. Now, admittedly, I do think I've only played it the time we played it on the video, and we played it wrong,
Right.
Slightly. And so my opinion of it was slightly colored, but I do like it. I think it's fun. I think that there's an interesting element to it. I'm a little shocked at the gunplay for a German nominee.
What, that it's violent?
That there's actual shooting.
Yeah.
You know, not that that's a problem in my book, but
Wow, I would never even thought of that.
it's
Yeah, man.
absolutely
Yeah.
shocking.
But it's very cartoonish gunplay.
Agreed.
Right?
Nobody dies.
No.
They somehow get shot and they're just blown back. You know.
And they have
have all
slow
bulletproof
down a little
vests,
bit.
yeah.
They have an extra card added to their hand.
Right, what happens when you get punched? Do you also go back?
Yes. Sadly,
Oh, I
we
never
didn't play
played that way.
Ah,
I've played this game many times since then, in a variety of wrong and correct
Yeah,
ways.
you taught people.
But I had lots of fun every time. This game, like you mentioned, is very, very cool looking. It's got the paper map. It's got
Well,
the
that's
little
not part of the
cardboard-
game.
Oh, it's not.
We'll show that, but yeah, the paper mat is
It's got a
is
lot
like
of
a
little
promo.
accoutrements,
Yeah.
and each individual deck, and the character design is kind of amazing in a cool cartoon western style.
French designers, man.
It's a game that
illustrators.
when you're playing on the table, people walk by and go, "Whoa, what is that?"
Right.
Yeah.
And you sit down and teach it to them in 10, 15 minutes, and they're playing and want to play again. It's a crowd pleaser, for lack of a better term. I have seen a lot of people just kind of jump right into it and appreciate it right away.
It does have that sort of out-of-the-box appeal.
It does, yeah. It wears its best elements right on its sleeve.
It's got a toy factor, right?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
that's one of the
Yeah.
odd things about that game. I feel is that you get that game and you're about a half an hour before you can play that game.
Well, yeah.
because
That's shocking. Actually,
making
as well.
the train.
Yeah, it's not exactly as simple to assemble either. So the first time you play it, you're not going to play it right away.
Camel Up won with a complex
That
pyramid
is a pretty weird
device,
build,
so
too.
that was a
Absolutely.
big build
Yeah,
too.
that's
Yeah.
But all those things you build it once and you're done, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to disassemble it every time you put it back in the box.
Exactly.
So, and believe me, there are plenty of people who. That's probably the best part of that game for them is putting the
Could
stuff
be.
together.
Could be.
Yeah.
All right, Nikki, do you have any reservations or appreciations on Colt Express?
Reservations? Yes. I did like the programming element of it, and I did like the whole Mamma Mia kind of thing. That game
explain what that means.
where you're building the pizza, and everyone's throwing their elements into the pile, and then
right.
you're trying to make your pizza card toppings. That has the same sort of element where everybody's picking what they want to happen, and they get all into a stack, and it goes down.
Oh yeah.
It goes down the stack.
Yes.
So things that you programmed in may not work because of something somebody else did.
Right.
Right.
All of that's interesting to me, but I don't know if I would play it all the time because my big pet peeve with lots of games are that whole take that kind of way of playing, and I'm just not. I don't like playing games that way. I like being able to, of course, win, of course, push the other guy back, but in a gamer way where I'm making a good decision about some sort of move or some sort of thing. And that's all about, oh, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to slap that guy in the face and punch and
steal their stuff.
And steal their stuff. And then because of the programming, you're not necessarily getting the guy you want to get. You're not necessarily getting the leader, which is what you should be trying to get. You could be hitting the guy who's way in the back.
Or swinging in the wind.
Yeah. And,
Which I think happened a lot to me in
know,
my game.
It's interesting
and
because
that's not fun to me.
I'm not a huge. I don't mind a little take that, but I'm also not a huge fan of that, which we'll get to when we talk about Elysium. But I don't that didn't bother me at all in this. I didn't even feel that way, and I'm wondering if some of that for you might just be thematically you're actually like punching people, or no, okay.
I punch people all the time.
This was sort of so chaotic in that regard that it didn't feel bad to me. It just sort of happened, and it always made sense that you were going to try to punch or shoot or steal from whichever person was closest to you, regardless of whether they
were the strategic choice.
If they
or
had
not.
the thing and you could reach them, then I felt like that was just understood. So that didn't. I know what you were saying, but that didn't bother me. But I'm also like you in the programming thing. I never liked Robo
Rally.
Yeah, never liked Robo Rally, and not that I think it's a bad game, because it's a very cool design of a game that I just don't want to play. And this is absolutely a much lighter sort of version of that, but it has that sort of same thing to it.
Yeah.
Now that said, I think the tunnels helped. I like that
the hidden programming parts. Yeah,
and I like that everybody had kind of a special power that could sort of balance or negate like one thing.
Sure.
That was fun. It sort of gave you a focus, like, oh well, I can do this, so let me try to do this as much as I can. That was kind of fun. But this is my least favorite of the three.
Colt Express. It was already not my favorite, and Nikki's only made me think that more. Actually, when she talked about it. No, I think that's good. I mean, you helped me think through and I like it. I like it because it's light. I like the toy factor. I like it's fun. I mean, when we played, we absolutely moved the cacti down the table to indicate that the train was going this way. That was really fun, right? And so it's another one of those games where everyone was having fun, everyone's laughing, but at the end I felt like, okay, I had the fun in that one play. I could play this a few more times. I don't think of this as like an evergreen Ticket to Ride, Settlers of Catan. That's what I'm looking for in Spiel des
Me
Jahres.
too.
I don't know if that's what they're all supposed to be, but that's what I'm looking for.
Right. Something you're going to want to return to and enjoy.
Yeah, and I'm never, like Dave said, I'm not super fan of the mechanism that's in Robo Rally and in Colt Express as well, where you're doing program movement. I know some people like that, but it seems like the people who like it, they like the fact that everything goes wonky and there's chaos instantly.
Right.
To me, that's like the opposite of what programming should be. Right? The whole idea is I'm planning. It seems weird that it just goes kablooey right away.
We are trying to send stuff to Jupiter.
Well, but the fact that it's so light saves it, and
Right.
makes it a lot of fun, and the thematic stuff is awesome, even without the toy factor. I mean, I think the train robbery is a kind of a cool, fun theme, and all the game equipment really makes it. I mean, I can see why. This is like you were saying. Like, I mean, when this thing showed up, and I happened to see it at BGG-Con, which is any big convention, it just shines because it's on the table and people see it and people hear people laughing. I mean, it just draws you to it. And I definitely wanted to play it. I'm glad I played it, but that's it.
Well, what about dice rolling then? How do you feel about that?
The dice rolling in Machi Koro I like a lot. I like dice rolling in general. Maybe not as much as you. You're a real dice game guy, right? But what I like even more in Machi Koro besides the dice is it's a building things game, right? I can't help. I mean, this is the 20-year anniversary of Spiel des Jahres, and Machi Koro has some, I think, direct connections.
No, it's not 20-year anniversary.
Sorry,
It's 20-year
I said that
anniversary of
Settlers of Catan. That's what I was trying to say.
And it's very much a Settlers type game.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Which to me is nothing but good.
Yeah.
And now I wouldn't want a clone of Settlers, but Machi Koro isn't a clone. Machi Koro is just has a lot of that same good feeling stuff that happens anytime you get to build something up. Now there's a little minor take that with the money. They do ding people a little bit.
I call it more than minor.
Yeah, but it's like the robber, and so I don't think it's not crippling, right? It just slows you up a little bit. I think you build your little mini city, and that's also a theme that people like.
Right.
In fact, even probably better than Settlers it's like, I'm going to have this restaurant and this little thing,
Right?
And you can see I'm not an expansions guy, but the possibility for expansions is kind of limitless in a city builder like that. So.
Well, there already is an expansion, right?
Right, the harbor. They were excited about the Germans were excited about the harbor expansion where you are dealing out 10 different cards, and then so there could only be a couple of some of the cards, and then when a pile is empty, you flip other cards till it's a different card, and then that I guess it would only be one.
Yeah, I've played that. Have you played that?
No,
one?
I've not played that yet. It sounds interesting.
I have played that way. It's so in other words, instead of having the 15 or 12 or whatever,
anyway, all of
instead of
them.
having all the cards out, you only have 10 unique cards. And when a pile runs out, you replace it from the deck. And if it matches one of the piles you already have, you add that to that pile. So some piles could have 4 copies of something, and some piles might only have 1 or 2 copies of something. It's interesting. I've only played it once, and what was weird was there's so many cards in the deck that if, for lack of a better term, good card comes up and it's not your turn, and someone else buys that good card and then it doesn't come up, there might be like a weird sort of imbalance thing there. I just don't know. As I said, I only played it once, and we didn't know we just decided to play it blind, so we didn't know what any of the cards were that were coming up. So we didn't know which cards might be, say, more powerful or not more powerful. But I found halfway through that game that even with the potential to have someone steal money from me, I wanted more money in that game than normal, just because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what big card might show up.
Right. That would be pretty random, potentially. You can't build towards something, especially when you've got one shot at it, maybe, in the entire game.
There's something nice about having all of the cards just laid out at the beginning and sort of seeing what your path is. But there's also something sort of samey about that I can see after 4 or 5 plays, much in the same way that there are a lot of games where people are like, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this for like my first 3 moves. And I often go, well, why are you playing this game then? Like, does it get interesting from move 4 on? And maybe it does.
Well, that is part of that is a recommended, not a recommended, but a variant that's in the base game of the German version of the game. It's in the expansion for in the US.
This is not the German version?
This is the US version.
Hey, let's see the German version.
Hey, the German version is in this little box.
Yeah.
I like the little box. I wish mine came in the little box. But
wait, this whole game is in this little box?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, sir.
That's very cool.
But that, I guess it
got room
can
for
sound kind of
expansions in
weird that we're talking about a
Right.
variant for something that might be award-winning, but
Well, again, this is in the
I get it.
the German version
Yeah,
of the game,
and-
so it isn't a
It's already in there.
It's in the base
And
game.
it's sort
Yeah,
of
it's just another way to play.
So I had the German experience because by the time I got my hands on Machi Koro, the Harbor expansion was already out, and when I went on BGG, people were already recommending that we play that way, particularly if you're playing with 2 players,
right.
and maybe even with 3. So I've only played it in the variant, and
And you still liked it then?
I liked it, yeah, because I could see, especially with 2 players, you have almost the opposite problem. There's so many cards available. It's just like, well, now really you can't get scripted, and people are just always going to go for this.
Is
thing
it
or
always,
that thing.
I don't know the expansion well enough, is it always 10 stacks or does it scale
I
for the
believe
number
it's
of
10
players?
stacks.
Like
Yeah.
with 2 players, is it 10 stacks? Or
I
is
don't
it
know what's
say-
in the German rules, but on BGG was someone who recommended if you're playing with 2 players, just do 8 stacks. So it's to try to get that scarcity thing going. So I don't want to get too deep in variants, but I mean, the whole idea is that, to keep it from being on a script and on rails, and you have to do, every turn you're going to do the same thing until you get halfway through the game, it addresses that just fine. And
Well, obviously the die rolls change your strategy anyway.
and how
if
the
you're-
money comes in.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And speaking of take that, you had brought that up.
I
On this one,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, you're right. There was a little more of it than I had prepared for, I guess, in Machi Koro. I feel like I was very predisposed to like Machi Koro. I like city building stuff like Mark does. I like having my own little display or tableau of cards and seeing how that develops. I don't mind dice at all to being the determining factor in something. But it overall just kind of left me a little cold. And I'm not sure. I think the art is gorgeous. I think it's a great looking game. I don't know if maybe the base game was just a little too simple and I'm actually ready for expansions already.
That's possible.
That's
Or if it
possible,
was
yeah.
just, I don't know, maybe I expected a little more and I didn't feel like there was enough build or interplay between my cards or
even
more than 2 or 3 strategic paths.
Or
really.
interaction with other players, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of...
So I enjoyed it. Actually, I like Lincoln with Colt Express. I only have played it the one time we played on camera, and I haven't gotten a follow-up yet, which I would like and might help me crystallize an opinion on it. But it didn't wow me, even though I liked a lot of the ingredients in it.
Yeah.
Nikki?
Okay. My main thing that I liked about it was the art because it's just great. And it does have that build your own city element, which I like because that translates into tile laying games, which are my favorite. I didn't, maybe it was because the game I played, I didn't feel that the dinging people was so bad. To me, and I'm going to bring up a bad, dirty word for gamers, it was in a way like Monopoly.
Yeah, exactly. I knew you were going to say that.
When you land on somebody's property and you have to pay, them. So I didn't feel it was bad in that way at all for me. It was fiddly for the cards, in my opinion. There was a lot of like, you have to know the cards. Maybe it gets a smoother play when you know the cards better. For a family kind of light game, I felt that was maybe a little more than what a family kind of light game should be, with knowing the cards.
Yeah.
And always looking and,
But
rereading.
Dominion was in that category, and it's even more so, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I would agree.
They and Dominion had to have videos. I think that the jury made videos on how to play that game.
But here's the thing, because I vividly remember the very first time I played Dominion, not quite understanding what was happening because there were these action cards that I didn't know all of, and the game ended so much faster than I thought it was going to end. But when that game was over, I was ready to play again. I mean, really ready to play again. That's now I don't have that same feeling here, but there is something to be said for games that have cards like that. You're not going to get it necessarily the first time.
Absolutely.
I think what made people realize Dominion was a winner was that feeling. Same thing for Settlers. I mean, I remember playing Settlers since you brought it up. I remember that even though I didn't quite necessarily get what was happening till about halfway through the game, I knew I wanted to play it again.
Yeah.
You know, there's whatever that feeling is when a game has just that it factor.
I mean, I actually felt that way about this. Nikki and I aren't as immersed in the deck building games as others because we just haven't played them that much.
Right.
And this was when we first played it. We played a Japanese copy of it, and I was impressed. I felt it had the Settlers of Catan aspect big time in a different kind of way. In the Dominion, which I had played. I played it probably the same time you did in a prototype form, and it was like, what is this game?
Yeah.
Right? And that was pretty shocking. This had some of that for me, and I feel it's an exciting game. I don't know that it's the best game ever, of course,
Right.
But I feel it's a strong candidate for this game.
I agree with you, by the way.
For this candidate.
Everything I said,
category.
I still agree with you. Just the choice between should I roll one die or two,
that's
is really cool in this
the
game.
neatest thing that you have a choice.
Yeah.
You have to build up to it, but you can still choose to roll less, which is really genius.
Yeah,
it's like
neat.
I'm going to block you with these high cards and being able to even get anything from this roll,
Right.
which is genius.
Yeah.
And that's a cool little gamer thing that's
Absolutely.
in there, right? Because I've played Machi Koro and the game, not Colt. I mean, I've played all three of them, but I've played Machi Koro and the game with non-gamers. I'll just call them non-gamers, right? And they kind of had that little spark with Machi Koro. I mean, they played, it's like, wow. And they wanted to see how they would play different sets of cards next time.
I think the die rolling was the thing that really clicked for me.
Right.
You know, I loved it. I loved it that people were rolling and I didn't have any choice. Like, I'm not getting anything on this one. And that was actually neat. So you're like, I must get a second, I'm working to get some stuff out here that actually will allow me to gain from a 7, being rolled or something like that, which was really cool.
Well, speaking of a gamer thing, let's move to this side of the table.
Okay.
To the Kennerspiel games, the more gamery games, as it were.
Asterisk on that,
Yeah,
right?
it's advanced family.
Is that what it is? Advanced family games.
Yeah,
okay.
that's a better way to say
I
it.
think calling them gamery games, most
This
of
year
our people
especially.
in the hobby know what we mean.
Really?
But these, I feel-
every time on BGG, I see people freak out. It's like, these games aren't even gamer games. These are light. You know?
Yeah, I
This
understand.
isn't.
Oh, I see that perspective, but in
I'm
comparison,
just saying they're wrong.
I feel like, I feel that's what this category is. I mean, well, we'll get to that in a second. Go ahead, Aaron. Pick one and start us off.
All right, let's start with Elysium. Elysium has some elements that can be pro or con depending on how you look at them. It's got the variability and extended sets of cards, which means when you played the game once, you haven't experienced the whole thing. You can mix in new families and totally change your gameplay experience. I think that's great. I think that's good for the long-term playability of the game. It obviously sets itself up easily for more expansions. But it also, you could almost say that Elysium is a little bit like a Magic the Gathering or a collectible card game in that there's lots of different cards with lots of different powers, and there's a little bit of a learning curve to, well, how do these work? What is the theme of this particular set? How do my cards work with each other? Which is, like I said, great for discovery and learning new tricks and combos, but also a little hostile to new players figuring it out. But something I think they did really well in this game was the iconography. All the cards have tiny text that you have to read to figure out what they do, but they also have big giant icons, and they're actually pretty easy to read, I think, most of the time. So they graphically made it a little easier on that heavy learning curve of all the different cards. Which, again, I think the cards can be a pro as well, just because there's so much to the game. It's like Dominion. You play it 20 times, then you throw a new set of cards in there, totally different game.
Absolutely. Elysium for me is, I like it. I think the most interesting element is the columns and not having to spend the column that you use to acquire the card that you got.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
the
quests.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
The other thing here.
My problem with it is you kind of have to follow. There isn't much changing tack because you're forced to not adjust once they're written into legend. You're kind of stuck. I suppose
because they're locked into
admittedly,
their sets.
you can change it if you're dinged, and like I was building when we played a family set, not a straight
Level.
level.
You were building a
Family
1, 2, 3,
Exactly.
and you shifted instead to
a 3 got dinged on me,
yeah.
and I wasn't able to continue. And it took me a while to kind of like recover, which is insane. One card shouldn't have been that hard,
Yeah.
and I don't know what happened to me for that. But I feel it's kind of like linear, and I don't like that it's not as easy to shift your path as I prefer in games. I like to. I was talking to Dave about it after the fact. I like games to be a little bit looser. I think that I'm happy when you can play a game from the seat of your pants without really paying a ton of attention.
Without having a long-term strategy that you have to craft.
I totally understand that kind of desire for people, but for me, I like to not, particularly because of the way we play games, I'm not really 100% paying attention. It's very difficult for me to be paying attention the whole time because I've got a lot of stuff going on in my head. But but I've always played that way. That's where I benefit in this situation, is that this is exactly the way I play. And that one just doesn't allow me, in my opinion. Now, obviously, with more knowledge of the game, that could change.
Right.
But otherwise, it's a really beautiful design. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff going on in there. It's just not necessarily for me.
Well, first off, I love that whole sort of tactics, not strategy sort of argument.
Right.
But this category kind of isn't that anyway, right? I mean, for example, Concordia from last year, which is a terrific game.
Absolutely.
You can't really play that by the seat of your pants. You have to kind of have some strategy, don't you, if someone races you to a place, you have to know you're trying to get to that place. Now, yes, if someone beats you there, you can go, now what am I going to do? But there are times in games like that where if you can't get the two things you need lined up, there is no alternate.
I feel there's more diverging in that game than there is in this one.
Well, you're probably
Not
right.
to say that there isn't, as I said, it's not impossible to do that, but once you've committed something to Legend, written it to Legend, there's not much more you can do.
Well, we didn't play it. There is a family that we didn't. And we played the basic 5 families that the game suggests. There is a family that messes with your legend.
Legends.
Yeah, that allows you to, I think, shift cards around within them or move them back.
Or use the powers that are supposed to be retired from them.
Yeah, and we didn't play that. So maybe that might solve your problem, but I would suspect you're not going to play this enough to ever discover if that will help you for that.
No, I like it. I mean, we are missing pieces from this game, and I'm asking to get them because I would like to play the game.
Sure, that
I
makes sense.
do think it's pretty neat.
I didn't like it. I mean, of the 6 games on the table here, they're all nominated. That's the only one that I actually didn't enjoy. Now, I only played it once, so I had that newcomer thing, and I understand what has been said already about understanding the cards that you can't maybe read across the table.
That I have a real hard time with.
Well,
The whole
that
time
actually-
I'm doing this, I couldn't see anything. I don't think the icons are that strong. There's a few icons I felt did not explain it for me.
Yeah, and that really wasn't my problem with the game, actually. it's maybe a pet peeve with me is like any game can have AP things going on, or especially people needed to do takebacks. I mean, players do that, right? But I think for sure there are some games that are more prone to that than others.
Right.
And Elysium is one of those games.
Yeah, I would agree.
Probably because that column thing, which is maybe the most unique and interesting thing that's going on, is also the least intuitive. It's the least familiar, which makes it innovative, right? I guess, or something. Original maybe is a better word. But I just didn't like that. I mean, it was when we played the game, it was with it fits and starts and going back and, oh wait, that card does that. Let me take that back, and that's a kiss of death for me. And I really didn't enjoy that game.
I would agree with you that a chunk of that was definitely first-time new player thing,
But it's never gonna go away.
But I also agree with you that I don't think that would go away entirely. It just, and to what you were saying, the other thing that feeds into that is also sort of what you were saying, which is if someone plays a take that card on you, and we discussed this when we played this game, but the level of take that in this game is very unbalanced. Not unbalanced, I don't want to use that word.
Variable.
There's a wide variance of it, and costing me a gold or a victory point or something like hurts, but isn't game changing. But losing the card you were planning on is just game changing. And those, or even someone taking the card you didn't think they were going to take. And the problem is it starts the decision tree from the top again. And I don't think you can fault people for thinking that way, because you're already trying to figure out the columns thing. To have to start that all over again, it does just slow things down.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think I lucked out with a family that really I understood and worked for me. But I didn't choose that family. I fell into it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It seems to me you should be wanting to, I'm going to try to get going on this family because I think that this is the good path. But I kind of, maybe it's not knowing the game, not knowing the families, but I fell into it. And it worked out for me, but I did fall into it. And there was no, like Lincoln said, there's no changing. Like, oh, this isn't working for me. Let me try and hone this way or hone it that way. And there isn't that. It's, you are on this path and that's it. As far as the cards being fiddly and all that, for this game I didn't have a problem with it because I expected that going into a heavier game, a meatier game. Whereas Machi Koro, I was not expecting that from that sort of game, so that was not my issue with this game.
It's funny. Sorry, it's funny. You were talking about sort of not being able to kind of change course, and you were sort of hitting that same thing. And I almost wanted to say, yeah, but the game's only 5 turns, which it is, and yet it did. It just seems like it's a long 5 turns. It does. I think if the game went at the speed of what you think of a 5-turn game being, you wouldn't be as bothered by the changing tack. You'd be like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. Oh, it didn't work. Oh well, that was 45 minutes to an hour. Let's try something again.
5 9-minute turns would be no problem.
Right.
Nikki, I have a simple question for you, and maybe for all of us. Did you have fun playing Elysium, and do you ever picture yourself having fun playing Elysium? Did you enjoy it?
I had fun playing Elysium. I would like to try some of the other families.
Okay.
But that kind of goes back to what I was saying. We could shuffle some different families in there. Will I actually get to play with those families, or will the guy on the other side of me start collecting those and I don't get to play with those? And I also want to add that I did like the column thing. I liked that decision idea. It's different and it's interesting.
Moving on to the next game, Orléans. What do you think of that one, Dave?
I like that one, actually. I'm pretty sure if I get the temperature of the room that you guys are going to head to this
I don't know about
Broom
that.
Service-y box. Really? Oh, you're going to surprise me.
I'm not going to surprise you, but
This one, I found that I liked more the next day.
As you thought about it.
Yeah, this is the one I kind of want to play again more than the other two, because even though there might be some sort of sameness to it, after a bunch of plays. I don't know. I'm sure already, once this comes out, there'll be people who is like, well, your first move has to be this. You know, your first 2 moves you have to.
Right.
I mean,
if you don't go farmer monk, you're crazy.
yeah, exactly. If you let someone run away with the farmer in the very first turn, blah,
right.
blah, 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 blah. But you know, who knows? You can't go farmer monk, right? You have to go university monk to get the monk. But then you might not get the monk because the event might come up that says you can't get monks this turn, and then that strategy just goes right out the window. Which is why the farmer is the obvious move. All right. So, but it's exactly that thing that I just sort of joked about that makes me intrigued by this game and kind of want to play it again. There was something kind of cool to. It's exactly what you said about this one. This game did have a bunch of, here's what I want to do, but I didn't draw those things. So now what do I do? And that's the kind of game I like. I like games where you have a plan and it maybe works out, and if it doesn't, you have to kind of figure a different plan.
You have to react.
Yeah. And I also like games, this is sort of puzzly.
Orléans?
Yeah, that little sort of like, okay, here are these things and how do I make them to my best advantage? And I like that the player interaction in the game exists, but it isn't overwhelming. I think one of the knocks that some people will have against this game is that kind of solitary thing where you're sort of really only doing your own thing, even though you have these little races.
That's absolutely not true, though.
Yeah,
in
I
our
agree.
game,
I agree.
because you know there was a lot of analysis on your part of what other people were doing early on in Orléans. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely slows the game down. That's a problem. I like this game, but I feel that kind of hinders it. The joy of it, because it's 18 turns, and those don't go quickly.
Right, the
You know,
first couple do, and then
maybe
it all slows down.
I really like this game a lot. I think it's really cool. It has elements of another game out this year called Hyperborea. Hyperborea, this is a chit building game or bag building game, and Hyperborea is cubes, and Hyperborea has conflict, where this one does not.
It's the same where you're creating a mix in the bag and then
drawing them out to do.
Right.
And I think that's pretty neat element this year.
Yeah.
You know, both of them are really, really cool. I think I like this one better, but I do like the other one a lot. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's
too.
okay. As I said, my opinion of that could totally change down the line once I play it a handful of times. Because it could be that my first 2 or 3 moves will sort of always be the same, and then what am I doing?
I don't see how it even could be that same.
Just 'cause of the
Just
drawing?
a little bit, because before long you're drawing out of a bag and you've got randomness. And like you said, the event tile thing flips up, and that makes every game different. You know,
Right.
But I really liked Orléans, and it's long. It was a little bit long for me, but I put an asterisk by that because I'm not the target audience for Kennerspiel. I like the lighter stuff anyway.
Right.
So the fact that I play any of these 3 games and they're long is not, in my mind, a strike against. I think for a lot of people, they're going to want something that's meatier. It's meatier. It is, like I think we said,
I think that's pronounced métier.
but you know, those first few turns, it seemed like it was just racing along, and
Yes.
then it really,
And then it really hits the
time
brakes.
slowed down.
The game sort of tricks you into thinking, oh, this is going to chug right along.
Right.
And I've played a couple other games in the past like that, where, and that's probably not a great quality that the game. It's, let me say it the other way around. It's a good quality for a game to accelerate to an exciting finish, and this game doesn't really do that.
Right.
But still, what did you say? This is bag building. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Chit building.
Chit building, yeah.
Star building, or whatever the heck it is. You know, I guess I like that mechanism in general, where you know I get things, you get different things. There's the uncertainty of how they're going to come up. I'm really kind of curious about this Hyperborea. Now, I haven't played that. It sounds like it's something I'd like. The look of the game is really neat too to me, and the theming is the sort of thing that I suppose a lot of people might find boring. This medieval town society, whatever it is, but I like that too. That's always fun for me. I never get tired of that, and I thought it was done well. I mean, they're not just generic markers. I mean, the monk does something, and the farmers obviously do something. They're not. I don't.
Something thematic, you mean?
Kind of thematic enough, not really thematic, but a little bit thematic. Certainly that whatever that common board is, where you're going to help the city.
The common good.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I thought that had a lot of fun.
Didn't we say he was going to like that part of it?
Did you guys call that? Yes. I think Aaron did that too. I wear that on my
deeds,
sleeve.
yeah.
Oh,
Perform beneficial deeds.
I like it. And I like the guys that you send. And there's also, it's got the, I can't help but call it the chapel effect in Dominion, where you strip your deck down, or in this case your bag down, by putting people there. That's a good gamer decision that's going on there. You get points, but you thin things down. So I was all set for all these Kenners to be like, maybe not for me exactly, but I had a good time playing Orléans, even though it was longer. I mean, and I, like you, Dave was saying, I thought about it later, and I thought, oh, now I know some things. Now I know some buildings to like not let a guy get 2 of those things or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I would play it again for sure.
Or let them get too far ahead on a certain track or something.
Right, or don't let yourself get too far behind on a certain track. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I liked Orleans.
Okay, so
and it's pretty. No,
It's very pretty. No, let's do that. It's very pretty. It's got this amazing medieval woodcut kind of art.
Yeah.
As soon as I opened up the box for this game, I snapped some pictures with my phone and sent them to people. I said, look at this beautiful game.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, that's one of its selling points, I think. It's really, really well designed graphically and artistically.
Yeah, it's tiny though. The little pieces.
Yes.
It's.
And there's
I'll let
some...
Nikki go because I think she's going to say exactly this.
Go ahead.
You know?
Well, she better now.
Now I got
you know
it.
what?
Can't
You
wait
say
to see
whatever
it.
you want.
Yeah.
Okay. It felt old schooly gamey to me, even though it's got that whole new. I don't know why. Maybe it's the theme, because it has the whole new chit building thing going on, which is a new element. But overall, it felt very, very old school game, which I'm not against. But I don't know if that's something the jury wants to put up there for, hey, people who want to get into this hobby.
Right. All
you
our
could
games
play
feel the
this-
same for the last 10 years, and they're all about medieval Europe.
Yeah, exactly. But I had fun with it.
Yeah.
And the board in front of you is very all about you and paying attention to, it's very solitaire. But as soon as you get out into the world of helping the general public or whatever that
Greater good.
Right.
then you start worrying about your other players. I need to get this up there before, you get it or you get it. But having said that, that was a mistake I did in my game where I wasn't paying enough attention to what other people were choosing on that first front board, and I got left in the dust. But I don't think that's a fault in the game.
I think
That
that's
was the
something that
way
happens-
I played it.
In your first game of a lot
Yeah,
of
the
things.
first time you
But-
play a game, that often happens, though, right?
I felt like, and this is just me, and maybe I need to play it again. I didn't like being forced to have to do the farmer thing.
Yeah, well,
And
when
I
somebody
had
chooses
to.
to do that,
I had to
can't-
do
I don't
that.
remember. What's
No,
the forcing part?
it's
Well, you mean you just got the penalty. of
She
it.
was behind on the track, and if you're behind, you lose a coin every time.
yeah, and the
time.
person
Yeah.
in the lead gains
Yeah, that was me.
not
in the
only a
lead.
coin
Yeah.
but also gains for the good.
Well, saddle up then. Get on.
Yeah.
that
No,
farmer
but
deck.
Yeah, but you know what? That I agree with
There
you.
were
Why
other
should you have to choose?
You
that?
don't have to
You
do
don't
it.
have
This was
to.
the thing I was thinking about the other day. As long as you stay tied with someone in the back, you're fine. Yes, the person in front is still gaining something, but you're no
A lot
longer.
more.
But
A
you're no
lot
longer
more.
losing anything.
You're gaining at least 2 points every turn, if not more.
No,
No, one.
Yes, you are.
You're gaining a point.
Because
and
we're
a,
gaining nothing if we don't advance on it, and you gain a coin and a good.
and the good is worth points.
A
that's
good
for
gets
sure.
more and more valuable as you go on.
Okay,
If you
yeah,
don't
that's
catch
true.
up for that, if you don't start taking those
You
farmers
think
away,
that track is totally unbalanced then? And
no,
none of the other ones
I,
are as
I
good?
just feel
No.
you can't ignore it.
I feel
and
that
that's
two
kind of
people
weird.
can ignore it, and as sort of like an unspoken cooperative thing where you both decide to stay in the back so that you don't get you don't get anything, but you also don't get penalized because you're tied now.
Nah, you have to trip up the leader. You have to. And if the
But there's no-
guy is doing that on that track,
I don't. I'm not saying
I
you're wrong,
feel
but
everyone that's playing that game has to play that. You get drug into
don't-
that fight.
you don't. That's what I'm saying. We don't know the game well enough to say you have to get into that fight. It could be that by not placing those two on that space, you can utilize them somewhere else. I mean, the person who's advancing up that track is not doing something else, right? They're using those chits to do something else.
In my opinion, it's different than, let's say, moving and gaining goods. the goods keep progressively getting better, and you're also getting money every time.
Yeah, I
Because
agree.
you're getting the tax. I mean, that is a powerful track.
But I can make a thematic argument, right? If you think about Agricola, or any of those games, but especially Agricola, where, staying ahead of your starvation curve is critical. I mean, in fact, to the point where that game starts to be a little less fun for me because it's so much about just keeping that at bay, right?
Well, and talk about a game that adds and adds and adds choices as the game goes on.
Right,
that
so you're always
every
doing that.
turn has more and more and more decisions.
I'm not sure the design is really intended this way, but the fact that it's the farmer track, to me, just abstracts and collapses that down to one track. And all you got to do is just, it doesn't have to be your whole game, but that's very important. That's keeping people fed. That's probably reading too much theme into it. But it's like, that's really important.
That's who you are.
That's the most important thing.
It's the first track for a
Like,
reason.
step one, no one starves to death. Right?
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's. I don't have anything more to add about Orleans, as we true Americans call it. Let's move on to Broom Service. Lincoln, how do you feel about Broom Service?
This was my favorite game of the bunch. Again, it's a program movement game, but what's really cool, and I know Nikki likes this as well, is that
Well,
you're
it's not really program movement, right?
No, a program
It's
turn.
deciding
Yes,
your card
exactly.
choices
There
ahead of
could be
time.
movement involved.
Sure.
But the really cool thing about this one is that you could, only if you decide to be brave early on, do you potentially get screwed.
Yeah.
But otherwise, taking cowardly can be spectacular, and you can make lots of progress in this game, and I really like that element. I think that it is borrowed from a previous design by, I guess, Alexander Pfister, I think originally did it, but it might be
Which was what
Pelican.
game?
Witch's Brew.
Witch's Brew. But it was a different game. This one the board makes it a lot more interesting, where there's, like David mentioned, there's an element that there is other play going on, and you can see what people are going to be, being able to deduce what other people might do on their turn is great. If you don't have, with the card game, which I did not play, you don't necessarily have that element, which is pretty awesome. What do you think, Nick?
I really like this game. I have heard people say that they've gotten totally they laid out their plan and it got blown out of the water and there was nothing they could do about it. But I felt like when my plans got kind of blown up, I felt like I could reorder the order I was going to play the cards I had chosen.
There's a dictation by because you're following suit, essentially. It's like a trick-taking thing, where you're forced to...
Yeah, you're not always making the
So
choice.
sometimes you're like, I'm going to do the mountain. Like, one of the turns we were going to get dinged for being in the mountains, and Nikki played that card first thing, boom. And it was like, wow, we're going to want to end up in mountains, but she's starting us off with the mountains, which it wasn't a bad thing for her, but it was very odd,
Right.
I wanted it out of the way.
I guess.
Right.
But even then, when other people did that sort of a move and it affected me, I felt like I was able to say, okay, well then I'll play this card first and this card second instead of the way I was going to do it.
Right.
So I never felt like I was stuck. And I like that element of the programming, because so many programming games, this is your program and do it. And no changing, no fixing potential things that would come up.
Well, that's absolutely that
By
game,
other
right?
people playing.
It's all stacked together,
Yeah.
so that
Right.
program is...
You're stuck
Which is interesting.
with
Colt
it.
Express.
Yeah, that game.
Yeah, you're stuck in Colt Express. You're stuck with that
You're stuck
program.
with the order,
this
right.
order you can change. One thing I keep repeating though to people is I am not entirely sure that this game belongs in this category. I feel like it can go over there.
Oh, that's interesting.
Actually, it's funny. I feel that Broom Service is in the correct category and actually does not belong with these games for sort of the reason you just said. I played Broom Service with a guy who had never played the game before and had no idea how the system works. And he had at least 2 or 3 turns in which he was not able to do that. He had his 4 cards, and this card absolutely had to happen before these 3. Okay. This card absolutely, had to happen before these 3, and someone did this one instead, and he was not able to then do anything.
Okay.
Just based on where his pieces were on the board, and based on him not taking into account, okay, if I get messed up, what can I do as a backup plan? And to me, A game that belongs in this category, a family game, is a game in which you can just pick 4 cards.
Yes, and always have something to do.
And always have something to do. And I
Okay.
believe you cannot do that in Broom Service. I don't think you can just pick any 4 cards and still have a decent turn out of it if they don't come up in the order you need them to. But I saw it happen, so...
Right. But that's why I said that I have heard a lot of people say, I didn't like the game because I got stuck and I couldn't do anything. And it wasn't just once, it was a bunch of times.
Right.
I didn't have that game. I was always able to read.
Those people are bad players.
And they shouldn't be playing Kenners.
I have a point about Broom Service, which is that even though your short-term tactics or your turn can be totally screwed by the order which the rolls are called, or choosing brave when you should have chose cowardly, or like I think Dave cautioned us against this, is having your plan be super tight. It has to be this order. This has to happen before this. All those things can throw you off, but I think I don't know how to put this concretely, but it's something to be said for the game that I think you can really enjoy it even if all those things
Absolutely.
don't happen.
I
You can
agree.
really make something of your turn and have a good time during your turn, even if your thing does not go as planned.
Agreed,
Yeah.
100%. You were asking me when we played what was my tactic. Well, my thing was I just was loose. Nothing was like had to be. The thing that makes this game interesting is you have 2 pawns
Yeah.
Yeah.
that give you flexibility that you
Right.
can. I'm not going to be able to do that one, but I can do this one.
Right.
And that, as long as you plan for having some flexibility between the 2, I think that's where you win that game. The problem is I think people are focusing on one pawn.
Yeah.
And they're programming that one pawn, and that's a
exactly.
mistake. You must be prepared for either one. Well, if that happens, I can do this.
Right. The perfect hand of cards is something that you can use with either pawn anytime, whenever
Absolutely.
they're called,
Right.
and whenever
Yeah.
you do brave or cowardly,
Yeah.
or whether
It's neat.
someone beats you to your goal.
I love the
really-
decision of should I be brave? Should I,
I
be
love
yeah,
that.
should
I
I be
agree.
I think
Yeah.
that's for Elysium's original innovative column choosing mechanic. That's the Broom Service.
Yeah, it's just
Brave
pot of
It's
so
gold.
cool.
It's really
Yeah.
really exciting
key
to
decision
think,
that's really
you're like,
interesting.
Dude,
yeah.
I just was so funny, and Aaron in
I-
our game, he's like, nope, I'm the brave one.
But I got that wrong so many times too, and
You got it
called
right, too,
brave
though,
when
couple.
I.
Well, because
when
you're early on.
I know, but
No,
Orléans,
we're
sorry.
talking about Broom Service. but I think that's really fun when you make that wrong call for the third
Well, you
time
have to
and
be.
get nothing out
That's
of it.
what this game feels quicker to me. I don't know.
It
that
is. It is.
Okay, and that's why it doesn't hurt it for me.
I agree.
That,
And I think that's partly why you maybe feel Broom Service could be over here, because unlike these 2 games, this one at least, if you get hosed and you can't do anything, moves along and ends at a relatively decent pace, and you don't. The only real sort of downtime in the game is often just trying to find the 4 cards you want to pick.
Yeah.
Or even worse, you picked your 4 cards and you realize you have 5.
That
And you can't get rid of any of them because you made
Yeah.
a plan with all of them.
Yeah.
Ah. What were you going to say?
Well, I like Broom Service quite a bit, and like we've been saying, it's got this innovative thing inside it, and the innovative thing is fun for me in this game.
Yeah.
I explained how the innovative thing in Elysium was not fun for me, but in Broom Service I like, and I have played Witch's Brew, okay, right, and it's normally my tendency when there's like a card game and a board game version. I like the smaller card game. I like Colorado better than Zulorado, and I maybe like Witch's Brew better than Broom Service, but there's no getting around that the central thing of what you're doing, which I don't know, what is the central thing? I was going to say it was the cowardly or brave decision, but maybe it's the planning. I mean, it's got a lot of neat kind of stuff right in the heart of it.
Right.
And I was really interested to see what the board was going to bring to the game, and it definitely brought stuff to the game, but there was still that real core of that fun decision, including the chaotic stuff that can throw your plans out of whack.
I do feel you can see that being able to look at what somebody else could potentially want with the board is really helpful.
Helps
Again,
you.
I have not played Witch's
Right.
Brew, but
Well, it works pretty similar. You can sort of
Right.
suss out what people are going to do, but there's still that, like, I'm pretty sure Dave's going to do this, and then all of a sudden he doesn't. Or, you're the first person, and you say, well, I'm not going to be
Yeah.
brave, and it turns out it would have gone all
I know,
around.
that's
Right,
the
right.
most hilarious
Yeah.
thing.
And
is
then
when
people
sometimes-
cheer, or people like, everyone goes
Sometimes
like,
the
"That's
best card
fun."
to choose is the one that no one thinks you're going to plan for. The one that no one thinks you're going to have a reason to take that role is the one that'll come through for you, or easily go brave around the table without
Well, the other
being
thing about that
countered.
is that you might choose to be cowardly because you don't want to go first,
Right.
Which is actually a pretty neat element of the game as well.
Or you might choose to be cowardly when you're the last player to play the card.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
That's
So that
exactly that.
So the person who's first stays first.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a gamerly
It's-
decision, right?
There's some brilliance here. It's got a number of obviously interdependent but equally important decisions and systems all kind of just meshing together in the game design. I think it's really, really clever on a lot of levels.
It's funny when you said that because there are a lot of card games where the board game version of them is, in my mind, the lesser version of them. And I think all the changes they made are real improvements for me. In Witch's Brew, for example, the first person to play any card must be brave. That's the rule. Anyone else can be cowardly after that. But the first person is required to be brave. So that's already another reason you don't want to be first. You have
It's
five.
also a decision they took out of your hands.
You
and
choose
now
5 cards from 12 instead of 4 cards from 10. So that also adds more stuff. But there's nothing in that game also that balances for number of players. Like, you almost don't want to play Witch's Brew without 5 because the full 5 is what makes it fun. And in Broom Service, if you have fewer than 5 players, you turn over cards. You get one deck of cards and you just turn 1 or 2.
Right.
It's not program. You just turn over 1 or 2 cards, and those cards essentially are -3 points now if you play them from your hand. You can still play them, but
It's just interference from non-existent players. kind of
correct.
thing.
That's
Huh.
and
Now, have you
I've only
played
ever
those?
played it with 5, so I don't know.
And when I played with you guys, we played with 5, and I heard it's recommended to be played with 5, and I could see why. But then I read that what you just described, how it works with other, and I thought, I think I might like to try it with
Yeah.
2 or 3. You know?
I actually think this might play really well with 3, whereas the card game version doesn't play to me at all well with 3. You want the full 5 because half the fun of the card game is that possible conflict.
Well, maybe if this wins, you can wait for Broom Service, the card game.
That'd be funny. All right, well, that's a fine segue, Mark, into taking us into our little predictions-y thing.
Favorites and predictions,
Let's start over here since
All
we're
right.
there. So
The Kennerspiel.
the Kennerspiel. Point to the game that you would like to have win. This is the one that, if you were on the jury, that you would vote for.
These are hard choices.
They are. That's great though.
Well, 2 of them
Actually,
are hard choices.
I think it's a great crop of games this year on
I
both
agree.
ends.
When
I
feel
there's
this-
really good choices and a good playing field.
For me, this is the stronger pool, but I feel that that's a great pool too. Mark was aghast that
You're
I felt
crazy.
That this was
Yeah, I'm
No.
with Mark on this.
I'm with you. This is the stronger pool.
I feel that after last year's 6 games, all of which were exactly what you guys just said.
Except for Rococo.
You know what? Even whether your feelings notwithstanding one word about Rococo, I mean, I loved Istanbul, but Concordia was also spectacular.
Oh, yes.
And I really liked Splendor, right? But Camel Up was also really cool. And to me, none of these games match any of those.
Really?
From last year?
Yeah.
Wow, you're crazy too.
Yeah,
Let's
crazy.
vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so this is
This
the one
that I would vote for.
that you would vote
My
for.
choice.
On
3?
1, 2, 3 point. On,
Okay.
on the
On 4.
on the unspoken 4.
Thank you.
You ready? 1, 2, 3, a vote. Oh.
3 brooms and 2
Two
Three
Orleans.
Brewers and 2 Orleans.
Nikki's
All right.
voting with 2 fingers here.
Now
I
vote
am.
for the one that you think the jury will pick.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's gonna
Ready?
be tough.
Yeah, it's
a 1,
tough.
2, a 3, a 4. You think they'll pick Elysium?
I think there's enough originality and new things in it that they will reward it. Yeah.
Even with the take that, well, maybe they would go that route. Maybe they would think.
It's so
I feel like this is
got many.
totally gonna win.
Really?
That's what I agree, but I think they
I-
might not like it as much.
It's definitely possible. I mean, I could not take the temperature of the 3 jurors.
Well, you're not supposed to.
I know, but it was interesting just to see they were like watching us play the games and excited about our reactions, particularly because they're trying to grow the awareness of the award in the
Yeah.
United States, which was exciting.
Now, before we vote on this, though,
Yeah.
I realized, and I don't know if it applies as much to Kenner, but as soon as you mentioned the jury, that reminds me that it was so fun hearing that Tom Felber
the speech that he
Yeah,
gave.
speech he gave at BGG-Con where he talked a little bit about what's going on.
Absolutely, it's
in the minds of the jury. And one of the things I forgot to bring up during these, might apply to Kenner's as well, is the importance that it plays with this wide range of people, and that the rules, that you
Are
can
very
learn the
clear.
game just from the rules. That's something that, I didn't think, I guess I read the rules to a couple of these, but normally, like you see on your show, Game Night, like people get taught the rules. So that's one thing you miss, is like how good the rules are in any of these things.
Well, and we're also reading the English version, which could be a not as good version as the German
Right,
version.
but
Or better,
Yeah,
in
of
some
course,
cases,
of
who
course.
knows, right?
But I mean, I really got that sense that the Spiel des Jahres is supposed to be this ambassador out to the rest of the world, and that includes,
Right.
it's not just gameplay, right?
Right.
It's artwork, it's shelf presence, it's rules,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
It
works
needs to
with
be
different age ranges.
It needs to be in
What?
Target
No, I
and
said
department
speech for
stores.
his thing. It
And,
wasn't
Oh.
a speech. It was given. It was like a
It's
little
talk, whatever,
conference.
yeah,
you know.
seminar thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All
sorry.
right, voting?
so,
Did you want to say
no,
something?
no, that's it.
What
All
are
right, I decided 4 was too long, so we're going to put it on 3 instead.
Oh, you changed it.
1,
up.
2, vote.
For
it's
what?
too much time. We're
Okay.
wasting time.
And
So
I don't-
you're going to
Okay,
pick.
So everybody
pick,
else vote on 4. Let Dave vote on 3.
pick the one that you would vote for. Of the 3, the one that you would vote for.
It's
Right,
it goes
favorites.
it goes 1,
Yeah.
2, point to Colt Express.
Well, if you do
What?
it Dave's way.
You would
All right,
vote
is
for
that-
that?
You ready? 1, 2, vote.
You guys are crazy.
Really?
We were,
That's what
we were
you
voting
would
on
pick?
4.
Yeah, we're
is what I would
standard
pick, yeah.
voting.
Okay. Okay.
Really? For the most fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But you've also played-
and like you just said, I look
You
at
played it a
from
bunch of times, though, right?
an evangelist standpoint. I can get people to appreciate this so easily. This is going to leap off the shelves of Target. This one's a little more settler gamery. It's
I understand that.
If not for,
absolutely.
Not for the or.
But
All right, so-
let's continue this
Now,
conversation.
point
after
to the one that you think that the jury will vote for.
Okay.
And I actually need a second, because
Oh, come
I
on.
really
You
don't...
prep.
Why don't
That's
you
why
check your
that's
notes?
why it should be
Prep
1, 2,
before
3,
you come
4.
here.
Yeah, okay. We need to go back to 4? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you need more time to think about it.
All right. No, on 3.
Okay.
On 3. Ready? 1, 2, vote.
Wow. You're pointing at
Colt Express.
So you guys like this one better, but you think the jury.
I think,
Yeah, that's-
I think the beauty of
I-
that game is
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah.
alluring.
Yeah.
But honestly,
Yeah.
I could have really flip-flopped on this.
Absolutely.
I could
In
do.
terms
They're,
of a
they're,
prediction.
they're a pretty tight race.
This
I
is
guess.
clearly my favorite, but in terms of a prediction, I could see it going either way.
I feel
I'd be
like...
shocked if that.
I would
it's a
too. I guess
game
we
that-
all
But I
would.
think that's a great game, though. It's,
It is.
But I just feel it's kind of...
It got its award by being nominated.
Yeah,
It made all of us
probably.
notice
Yeah.
it and go out and buy it in
Right,
a lot of
right.
cases, right?
Right, because
Yeah.
Quicks,
Says me.
Quicks didn't win that year, right?
No, but it sold a
Hanabi
lot.
won.
Yeah. Well, that
So-
was... Quicks
that
was
was-
up Hanabi that same
Yeah.
night. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel...
And Augustus.
Yes.
Giving it actual thought for just in that moment where you guys allowed me to sort of tread water and think about it, I actually think the jury might pick this one this year just because it's time to recognize these Japanese game designers.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's a thought.
I
yeah.
also think they might
But didn't
pick it
Hanabi win?
because
Oh, no, that was a French designer.
Ah,
because Colt Express is a fairly complete game, and Machi Koro already has an expansion and
Yeah.
probably many more on the way. And I feel like that they,
They
like
like
that,
that.
and
That's
it
expandable,
speaks to the
supportable.
longevity of it.
Yeah.
You
they
might be
can
playing
add other cars to this game.
or new characters, but
like
they're not
it.
going to like
Different
vastly rearrange the experience of Colt Express. You might play Machi Koro 3 years from now, and
But you never
have it
know. You can
totally
be
different.
surprised. That's what's exciting
You're
about
right. You're right.
expansions.
I just feel
Sometimes
like
is there's
that has a-
some massive change to the game that. Well, that was the Dominion Adventures game that we played. The new expansion.
Not
I was
too-
shocked at some of the stuff.
Please,
on that
all
game.
those historical settlers versions, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
amazing
Yeah.
games actually.
Yeah.
Nuremberg is one of my favorite ones of those.
Mine too.
You know what though? You accidentally brought up a very interesting thing.
Way to go.
No, I think part of your appreciation for this, and this is in general, I'm not saying anything that's a surprise, is that we've all played this once and you played it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for that, of playing something a few times and sort of getting a sense of it. I mean, a lot of these games, our first and sometimes only play is on this show.
Right.
Right.
And it is tough sometimes trying to, that's that whole cult of the new
Yeah.
thing.
Ideally, we would have played these all several times to really see how they
Like the jury
develop.
does, right?
Well,
Yes.
the purpose of our show is to teach the game and have new players play it. We're not really reviewing the game. We're just giving
Sure.
our
Yeah,
impressions.
totally.
And I've definitely firmed up my opinion about games sometimes later on, but we mostly play them here. Sometimes, like, we'll do our research to find games that we're excited about, and sometimes we'll play games blind where we've all never played them.
Yeah.
But I feel they all have something to offer this year. I've been really excited about the nominees for a few years now. I think they've done a great job. I know Mark doesn't agree, but I just feel this is a stronger pool. I can understand that this being a complete ding for him makes that a weaker pool. Whereas,
But you think this is stronger than Istanbul, Concordia, and Rococo?
I'm just saying between these two.
This year.
I'm
This
saying
year.
this year, this
And you know,
pool-
honestly, it's probably the fact that I like this style of game so much
Absolutely.
more. Probably every year I'm going to prefer this batch.
Yeah, I understand
But
totally.
again, the Splendor Camel Up concept.
Concept.
Mm-hmm.
It was
like-
a great set of games.
That was a
last year.
great
Yeah.
set of
Yeah.
games. That's not this set
So
of
was
games.
the. I think
Yeah, if
I
you
know
say
that
so.
there's some people who don't like Rococo here, but I really like that game. I think that's a really neat game, and that set last year was amazing as well. And I picked entirely wrong. I think you were the one that picked Istanbul for that, and I picked.
Listen, I thought Cacao.
I think I
I
picked
thought
Concordia.
Cacao being in this set
Yeah,
was,
me too.
was a
Oh.
no-brainer.
I thought
Yeah,
that too.
yeah.
So
For kind of the same thing that you said about Orléans, which was Cacao also kind of had that old school feel,
Yeah.
but it didn't feel derivative. It just
Dude, the
felt,
placing the tile on top of a tile is huge in that game.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Like saving those to do that for later is just a
Well, you
neat-
have to do it later.
You
That's
have
the other
to,
thing. The
yeah.
game forces
Oh,
you
no,
to not
absolutely,
even.
but I'm just
think-
saying, but
I
trying
think
to
that's
save
a
those
smart
pieces.
choice, though, right?
Yeah.
Was,
it limits your decisions in the middle of the game. You're like, well, I can't do this now, so I won't think about it. Or rather, I want to make sure I save this one tile for
Exactly.
later.
was cacao recommended?
Yes,
though?
it is on the
Yes, it
recommended
Okay.
list.
It absolutely was. All right, well, there you go. Those are the games. We'll
Well,
find
that's
out.
the game right there.
We'll find out in days, weeks.
This coming
Days.
Monday. This coming Monday, the announcement.
Oh wow.
Holy smokes!
So
Yeah.
update the. Put a comment down underneath the video of who was right and who's got the best stats
I'll never
for
do that, but I
predictions.
will.
or vote. Have we ever asked people to vote?
Well, I mean,
Well,
no,
people.
but-
Yeah.
Yeah, they all got.
Feel
hell,
free to share your opinions.
Yeah, in
if
the
you've
comments.
watched this whole video,
Yeah.
we will listen to your opinions about
Well,
what's
Aaron
gonna
will.
win.
Aaron will.
No, I read all that.
All right, Lincoln.
Email
well, Lincoln's-
Dave at.
you
Yeah.
be quiet.
Yeah.
You be quiet at gmail.com.
Cool.
All right, thanks everybody.